The girl Keanu Reeves never forgot. The night was quiet, but inside Keanu's heart, there was a storm. He sat by the window of his small apartment in Toronto, staring at the city lights. People often saw him as calm, almost silent. But in that silence lived many memories. Among all those memories, one face never faded. It was the face of a girl he had once met, a girl who had left a mark so deep that even fame, success, and time could not erase it. It began years ago, before Hollywood knew his name, before cameras followed his every step. Keanu was just a young man struggling to find his way. He worked small jobs, rode buses through cold nights, and dreamed quietly of acting. Life was heavy, but he never complained. He had learned early that suffering was part of existence. Yet, in the middle of his struggles, something unexpected happened. He met her. Her name was Claire. She was not from his world of auditions and scripts. She worked at a bookstore near Yonge Street. The store was small, filled with the smell of paper and coffee, and it became his escape after long days. He often walked in, pretending to look for books, but in truth he came to see her smile. Claire had a simple kindness, the kind that made strangers feel seen. When she spoke, it was as if the noise of the city softened. At first, they only exchanged short words. She would recommend a novel. He would nod and take it even if he had no money to buy it that day. Sometimes he read the first chapter standing, near the shelves, only to feel close to her for a little while longer. She noticed, but she never judged. Instead, she once slipped him a worn-out copy of a book and whispered, "You can keep it." Everyone deserves a story. Those words stayed with him. Their friendship grew slowly. They would talk about life, about dreams that seemed too far to reach. Claire believed in small joys, helping a neighbor, sharing food with a stranger, giving hope even when she had little. Keanu, who had carried so much silence inside, found himself opening up to her. He told her about losing his father to absence, about the struggles of his mother raising him, and about how acting felt like his only light in the dark. Claire listened, not with pity, but with respect. Then came the night that changed everything. It was winter, and snow covered the streets like a heavy blanket. Keanu had finished a failed audition that left him broken inside. He walked with no direction, his breath freezing in the cold. He found himself outside the bookstore, and through the glass he saw Claire cleaning the counter. Something in him cracked. He stepped inside, and when she looked at him, he could not hold back his tears. He told her he felt like giving up. He said he was tired of rejection, tired of pretending to be strong when inside he felt small. Claire did not give him empty words. She simply walked around the counter, placed her hand gently on his shoulder, and said, "Pain is part of the path. But kindness and patience make us stronger than pain ever could." Those words became his anchor. He never forgot them. But fate is never simple. Claire had her own battles, battles she never fully shared. She often spoke of dreams she could not chase, of burdens she carried quietly. Yet she never let her pain turn into bitterness. She taught him resilience not by words, but by the way she lived. And just when Keanu thought life was giving him a reason to hope, everything shifted. One spring morning, he walked into the bookstore only to find it closed. The windows were covered, the sign taken down. Claire was gone. No message, no explanation. It was as if the universe had pulled her away. Keanu searched for her, asked people on the street, but no one seemed to know where she had gone. Weeks passed, and then months. Slowly, the truth settled in. Claire had disappeared from his life. Yet, she had left him something more powerful than presence. She had left him a way of seeing the world. She had shown him that even in silence, kindness speaks louder than pain. Years later, as his face appeared on movie posters and his name echoed across the world, he still carried her words. In moments of grief, when he lost loved ones, when loneliness tried to swallow him. He would remember that winter night in the bookstore and the voice that told him patience was stronger than pain. To the world, he became an actor, a star, a man who lived with quiet grace. But to himself, he was still the boy who once stood in the snow, saved by the kindness of a girl he never forgot. And deep inside, he wondered if one day, somehow, life would let him see her again. Echoes of a vanished kindness. The days that followed Claire's disappearance felt like a blur. Keanu threw himself into auditions, not because he was confident, but because he wanted to escape the hollow space she had left behind. Every time he walked into a crowded room, he searched for her face. Every bookstore he passed, he glanced. Inside, hoping to hear her voice. But Claire was nowhere. Yet her absence did not erase her presence. It was strange. He carried her words with him like a hidden compass. When directors dismissed him, when casting agents said, "not good enough," he would hear her gentle voice reminding him that patience was stronger than pain. He would breathe, stay calm, and return again the next day. Still, there were nights when the silence of his apartment felt unbearable. He would sit at his desk, staring at the book she once gave him. The pages were worn, the corners bent, but he kept it as if it was the last piece of her he could hold. Sometimes he read the same lines again and again, not for the story, but for the memory of her smile as she had handed it to him. One evening, after another failed audition, Keanu walked into a diner. He sat alone, lost in thought, when he overheard two strangers talking at the next table. Their words froze him in place. "Remember that girl from the bookstore?" one of them said. "Claire. I heard she left town suddenly. Something about her health." Keanu's heart raced. Health? He leaned closer, trying to catch every detail, but the men changed the subject, leaving him with only fragments of truth. A storm of questions filled his mind. Had Claire been sick all along? Was that why she disappeared without a word? Why? Had she never told him? The uncertainty gnawed at him. But instead of breaking him, it gave him a new determination. He realized he had no control over whether she was gone for good, but he could control how he lived with her memory. And so he decided to honor her, not with tears, but with resilience. Keanu began to change the way he approached his work. Instead of chasing fame, he chased honesty. When he read lines, he no longer tried to impress. He tried to feel. He wanted his characters to carry the weight of real pain, the kind he had known. Directors began to notice. Though small, his roles started to grow. People said he had a quiet depth, something rare. What they did not know was that behind that depth lived a girl named Claire. But life tested him again. Just as his career was beginning to rise, tragedy struck. One of his closest friends died in an accident. Keanu felt the familiar pull of grief, the kind that threatened to drown him. He walked alone through the city that night, his steps heavy, his chest tight. And then, as if the universe had timed it, he passed by a park bench where someone had carved words into the wood. They read, "Kindness is stronger than pain." His breath caught. Those were Claire's exact words. He touched the carving with trembling hands, wondering if it was a sign or just coincidence. But in that moment, it didn't matter. It was enough to remind him that he was not truly alone, that somewhere, her spirit still walked beside him. From that night on, he made a silent promise. He would live not just for himself, but for the kindness Claire had shown him. He would carry it into every role, every conversation, every quiet moment when the world expected nothing from him. The years rolled forward. Movies came, some successful, some forgotten. Fame began to wrap around him like a shadow, but he never let it control him. He still took buses sometimes, still ate at small diners, still gave away what little he had to strangers in need. People thought it was unusual for a Hollywood star, but Keanu did not see himself as a star. He saw himself as a man who had once been saved by a bookstore girl who taught him that humility mattered more than fame. Yet deep inside, the question never faded. Was Claire still alive? Had she found peace? Or was she gone from this world forever? The mystery haunted him, sometimes quietly, sometimes sharply, like a sudden ache in the chest. Then came the night that changed everything again. Keanu had just left the set of a film. The streets were buzzing with fans and flashing lights. He smiled politely, signed autographs, and thanked them, but his heart was elsewhere. As he turned a corner to escape the noise, he saw a figure walking slowly across the street. Her walk, her frame, even the way she held her bag. It felt familiar. Keanu stopped, his breath frozen. Could it be? His heart pounded like a drum. He stepped forward, his voice low, trembling with hope. Claire? The figure paused, turned, and in that moment, the world seemed to fall silent. The face in the crowd, for a heartbeat, the world seemed to freeze. The figure on the street stood under the dim glow of a streetlight, her face partly hidden by shadows. Keanu's chest tightened as he whispered her name again, almost afraid of breaking the fragile silence. Claire. Is that you? The woman looked up. Her eyes met his, and for a second he felt the same calm warmth he had once known in the small bookstore. But then, just as quickly, the woman turned away and kept walking, disappearing into the busy night crowd. Keanu stood still, torn between doubt and belief. His mind screamed that it must have been her, yet his heart feared it was only a trick of memory. He tried to follow, pushing through the sea of strangers, but she was gone. The city swallowed her up as if she had never been there. That night, sleep did not come. Keanu lay awake, replaying every detail of the encounter, the shape of her face, the familiar softness in her gaze, the way she hesitated for just a second when she heard his voice. It could not have been a coincidence. It had to be her. And, yet, why would she vanish again without a word? The next day, he searched the same streets, the same cafes, the same corners of the city. He asked quiet questions, but no one seemed to know her. Each answer felt like sand slipping through his fingers. The uncertainty was almost unbearable. Still, Keanu carried something different now. It was no longer just a memory that guided him. It was the possibility that Claire was still out there, alive, watching the world from somewhere unseen. That possibility gave him both hope and torment. As days turned into weeks, he returned to his work with a strange energy. When directors spoke to him, he listened more deeply. When strangers approached him, he smiled with more sincerity. He began to understand that the true gift Claire had given him was not only kindness, but the reminder that every moment could be the last chance to connect with someone. But the universe had more trials waiting. One evening, while filming in New York, Keanu came across a group of fans gathered outside the set. He signed autographs and spoke gently with them, but his attention was drawn to a young woman standing apart from the crowd. She was thin, with tired eyes, holding a worn-out book close to her chest. Keanu stepped toward her. "Would you like me to sign that?" he asked softly. The young woman nodded, but then shook her head. "It's not for me," she whispered. "It belonged to my aunt." She always said there was one actor who reminded her of someone she once knew. She said he carried the same silence and the same kindness. Keanu's heart raced. "Your aunt... what was her name?" The girl looked down at the book, her voice barely audible. "Claire!" The sound of the name struck him like lightning. He stared at the young woman, trying to breathe, trying to hold steady. Before he could ask more, a rush of fans closed in, and the girl slipped away into the crowd, leaving him with only the echo of that one word. For days, Keanu could think of nothing else. Claire had an aunt. No, it could not be coincidence. The threads of fate seemed to pull him closer and closer to her, only to let her slip away again. Alone in his hotel room, he stared at the city skyline and whispered to himself, "Why do you keep appearing and vanishing? Are you trying to tell me something?" And in the silence, he remembered the old bookstore, her gentle smile, and the way she had once told him that everyone deserves a story. Maybe, he thought, this was not just about finding her. Maybe this was about finishing the story she had begun in him. Still, the longing remained. He needed to know if she was alive, if she was safe, if the woman he saw that night was truly Claire or only a ghost from the past. And so, with a heart both heavy and hopeful, Keanu decided he would not stop searching. Not until the truth revealed itself. Fragments of the past, the days following the encounter with the young woman, felt like walking through a fog. Keanu carried the weight of her words everywhere he went. She had spoken Claire's name so casually, yet to him it was thunder, striking the quiet sky of his life. Claire was not just a memory anymore. She was tied to the present, to people still walking these same streets. One night, restless and unable to focus on his scripts, Keanu returned to the same street where he had seen the woman who looked like Claire. He walked past the cafes, the bookstores, the diners, every corner glowing under city lights. Nothing seemed different, but then his eyes caught a small notice board outside a community center. There were flyers pinned to it, some faded, some fresh. One flyer in particular stopped him cold. It was for a charity fundraiser. The name written at the bottom was familiar. Organizing Team, Claire S. His hands trembled as he touched the paper, his heart beating fast. Could it be her? After so many years, had she rebuilt her life in quiet corners, far away from the noise of fame and the glamour of Hollywood? The next evening, Keanu went to the community center. He entered, quietly, not wanting to draw attention. Inside, he saw people moving tables, arranging food, and stacking books on shelves. The room smelled of hope and simplicity. He scanned the crowd, searching for her face, and then, across the room, he saw her. She was older now, her hair carrying faint strands of silver, her figure thinner, her smile softer, but it was her, Claire. She was speaking to a group of children, handing them books with the same gentleness he remembered from the little shop long ago. Her voice carried warmth, even in the noisy room. Keanu's breath caught. Every part of him wanted to rush forward, to speak her name, to tell her she had never left his heart. But something stopped him. He noticed the way she moved, slow, careful, as if her body carried invisible weight. He saw the faint tiredness in her eyes, the way she rested against the table when she thought no one was looking. It struck him that her life had not been easy. He realized then that disappearing all those years ago had not been her choice of cruelty, but perhaps an act of survival. Still, he could not leave. He stood in the corner, watching until the event ended and people began to leave. When Claire finally stepped outside, Keanu followed. Under the quiet glow of the streetlights, he spoke, his voice shaking with both fear and hope. "Claire, is it really you?" She froze. Slowly she turned. For a long moment their eyes locked, and then she whispered, almost in disbelief, "Keanu." Her voice carried both surprise and sadness. Before he could step closer, she looked away, her eyes filling with something heavy. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "This life, it's not for you." His chest ached at her words. "I've never stopped thinking about you," he admitted. "Not for a single day." Claire shook her head, tears forming. "There are things you don't know, things I never told you. I left because I had no choice." Her words cut through him like glass. He wanted to ask everything. What happened? Why she vanished? Why she was here now? But before he could, a car pulled up. Someone inside called her name. Claire wiped her eyes quickly, gave him one last look, and stepped into the car. Keanu stood alone on the street as the car disappeared into the night. His heart was a storm of hope and pain. She was alive. She remembered him, but she was still hiding something, and now he knew he could not let her vanish again. Truths in the silence. The night after Claire disappeared into the car, Keanu could not rest. His mind replayed every detail, her voice calling his name, the pain in her eyes, the way she told him he should not be there. It was not rejection, it was protection. He could feel it. Something heavy lived behind her words, something she had carried for years. The next day, he returned to the community center. He spoke with volunteers, asking careful questions. Most of them smiled when they spoke of Claire. They said she had been helping there for years, giving food to the hungry, teaching children, raising donations quietly without asking for credit. They called her selfless, someone who carried her pain but never let it darken her kindness. But when Keanu asked where she lived, the answers grew vague. "She doesn't share much," one woman said gently. "She comes, she gives, she disappears. It's like she belongs to everyone here but also to no one." That night, Keanu stayed near the center until the evening crowd faded. Finally, Claire appeared, walking slowly with a bag of books in her hand. He stepped out from the shadows, his voice soft. "Claire, please, don't walk away again." She stopped, her shoulders stiff, then turned. Her eyes carried both exhaustion and tenderness. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a sigh, she nodded toward a small bench nearby. "Fine, 5 minutes," she whispered. They sat together in the quiet street. Keanu's hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady. "Why did you leave that night? Why without a word?" Claire looked down at her hands. "Because I was sick," she said finally, her voice almost breaking. "I didn't want you to see me fade. I thought if I left quietly, you could remember me as I was, not as someone broken." Keanu's chest ached. "You should have told me. I would have stayed by your side." She shook her head. "You were young. You had dreams, Keanu. You deserved to chase them without being tied to someone who might not even live to see the next spring." Her words cut deep, but her honesty carried no bitterness. Only sorrow. He leaned closer. "You didn't take away my burden. You gave me one. Every day, I lived with the question of why you were gone. I thought I had lost you forever." Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she tried to smile. "And yet you lived. You became stronger. I see it in you. You carry pain differently, now, with grace. Maybe my leaving gave you something after all." Keanu shook his head slowly. "It gave me emptiness. And still, after all these years, I never forgot you." They sat in silence, the air heavy with all the unspoken years between them. Finally, Claire whispered, "The sickness never truly left. Some days are good, some are hard. I have learned to live with it. But I never wanted to pull you into that storm. I chose to disappear because I loved you enough to let you go." His heart broke hearing those words. Yet inside that pain was also awe, for her strength, for her resilience, for her unshakable kindness even through suffering. He reached out, gently touching her hand. "Then let me carry part of it now. Please, Claire, don't shut me out again. I don't care how hard it is. I just want to be there." Her lips trembled. She looked away, as if searching the night sky for an answer. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know if I can let you in again, Keanu. Too much time has passed. Too many wounds. Time doesn't erase what is real," he said quietly. "And what I felt for you has never faded." For the first time since their reunion, she let herself meet his eyes fully. There, in his gaze, she saw not pity, not obligation, but the same sincerity she had known years ago in the little bookstore. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Maybe. Maybe I made a mistake leaving." Keanu held her hand tighter, as if he would never let her vanish again. But even as hope flickered between them, a shadow lingered. Claire's illness was not gone, and her life had been shaped by years of battles. She had fought alone. The truth had begun to open, but deeper scars remained, waiting to be revealed. The weight she carried, the nights after Claire's confession, felt different. For the first time in years, Keanu no longer wondered if she was alive. Now he knew, but that knowledge brought its own storm. He thought of her constantly, her tired smile, her trembling words, her hidden strength. She had given him honesty, yet he could sense there was still more she kept locked away. Keanu began to visit the community center quietly, not as a star, but as a man searching for someone who mattered to him. He would help carry boxes, stack books, serve food. Sometimes Claire would be there, sometimes not. When she was there, their eyes would meet, and though words were few, the silence between them spoke louder than noise. One evening, as the event ended, Claire allowed him to walk her home. She lived in a small apartment above a bakery, nothing fancy, just enough to keep her safe. The place was warm but modest, filled with books, plants, and small photographs of the children she had taught. Keanu looked around and felt both admiration and sorrow. She had built a quiet life of kindness, but it was also clear she had lived alone for too long. Sitting across from her at a small wooden table, Keanu finally asked, "Claire, what happened after you left? What did you go through all these years?" She hesitated, staring down at her hands before speaking in a low voice. "After the bookstore closed, I learned the truth about my health. It was more serious than I thought. The doctors warned me that I might not have much time. I didn't want you to see me grow weaker, so I ran. I thought I was protecting you." Her voice shook, but she went on. "I moved from place to place, sometimes to hospitals, sometimes to shelters when money was gone. I worked wherever I could, cafes, shops, cleaning jobs. But my body betrayed me often, and I would collapse, lose work, and start again. It was a cycle I thought would never end." Keanu's heart tightened. He could almost see her walking those lonely streets, fighting battles in silence while he had been on screens, surrounded by lights and applause. Claire continued, her eyes glistening. "There were nights I wanted to give up. But then I would remember that winter night in the bookstore when you stood before me broken. I remembered the way you trusted me with your pain. And I thought, if Keanu could survive his storms, then maybe I could survive mine too." Tears burned in his eyes as he listened. He realized she had carried his memory the same way he carried hers. They had been apart, yet somehow they had kept each other alive. "Claire," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "you never should have faced all that alone. I would have been there." She shook her head softly. "You had your own battles. I watched your movies, you know, sometimes from hospital beds, sometimes on old TVs in shelters. I saw the man you became. Humble, gentle, strong. I was proud of you, even from far away. I didn't want to weigh you down with my weakness." Keanu reached across the table, taking her hands in his. "You were never weakness. You were my strength. You still are." For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the faint sound of traffic outside. Claire looked at him, her eyes searching as if trying to decide if she could truly let him back into her life. Finally, she whispered, "The truth is, the illness is still with me. The doctors say it cannot be cured, only managed. Some days are light, some days are heavy. I don't know how long I have, Keanu. That's why I kept you away. His grip tightened gently around her hands. "Then let me walk with you through whatever time you have. Whether it's years or days, it doesn't matter. What matters is being here now." Her tears fell, but her lips curved into the faintest smile. It was the same smile he had seen in the bookstore years ago, a smile that carried kindness even in sorrow. That night, when Keanu finally left her apartment, the city lights felt softer, the air heavier with meaning. He knew their path. Ahead would not be easy, but he also knew something else. Claire's presence, fragile and uncertain as it was, had already changed him once before. And now, having found her again, he would not let her fade from his life without fighting for every moment. Love that never left, the days that followed were unlike any Keanu had lived before. He balanced the noise of film sets and the silence of Claire's small apartment. When the cameras turned off, he rushed back to her world where there were no scripts, no spotlights, only honesty. He cooked for her, carried groceries, sat with her during her hardest evenings, and listened when her body gave her more pain than words could describe. Sometimes they spoke of the past. Sometimes they sat quietly, saying nothing at all, yet feeling everything in the silence. Claire admitted that for years she thought of him as a dream she had once known, a kindness she had let go. Now, seeing him again, she feared it was all too fragile, that life would take him away just as it had taken so much from her. One rainy evening, as the city roared with thunder outside, Claire finally spoke the truth. She had kept locked in her heart. She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling, her voice soft. "Keanu, I don't have much time. The illness has reached a point where the doctors say the future is short. I have accepted it. I live with it every day. What I fear is not death. It's leaving you with another loss." The words pierced through him like fire. But instead of breaking, he knelt in front of her, his hands holding hers firmly. His voice was steady, even through his tears. "Claire, I have lived through losses that crushed me. But losing you once, without knowing why, was worse than anything. If this is all the time we have, then I would rather face every moment with you than spend a lifetime without you." She broke down, her tears flowing freely. She leaned into him, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to be held without fear. In the weeks that followed, their bond deepened. Keanu, the quiet star of the world, spent his brightest energy in the dim light of Claire's home. He read to her from the same old book she had once given him. He pushed her wheelchair through parks on sunny afternoons. He stayed beside her, bed on the darkest nights, whispering words of comfort. The world outside wondered why he often turned down public appearances, why he slipped away from the glamour others chased. But Keanu knew where his true stage was now. It was not in front of cameras. It was in the quiet moments where love demanded presence, not performance. And then, one morning, Claire asked him something that cut through his soul. Her voice was weak, her body tired, but her eyes still carried the same light. "Promise me one thing, Keanu. When I'm gone, don't let grief close your heart again. Live with the kindness we once shared. Carry it to others as you always have. Let my story stay alive through the way you touch people's lives." His tears fell, but he nodded firmly. "I promise. You will never be forgotten. Not by me, not by the world. You changed me once, Claire. You gave me strength when I had none. You showed me kindness when I was broken. I will carry that forever." Not long after, Claire's journey came to its gentle end. She left quietly, in peace, with Keanu holding her hand until her final breath. The loss shattered him, but unlike before, he did not collapse into emptiness. Instead, he lived with her memory as his guide. In every small act of kindness he gave, to strangers in every moment of silence he shared with those in pain, he carried Claire. He kept her alive in the only way he could, through love expressed in action, not words. And though the world celebrated him as a star, admired his humility, and spoke of his resilience, only he knew the truth. The man they praised was not born from fame. He was born from the love of a girl in a bookstore, a girl who gave him a book and whispered that kindness is stronger than pain. The girl Keanu Reeves never forgot.